All right, fantastic. Thank you everybody for joining us for this very special session on the top 6 tiny homes available in the market right now. We're really going to just cover a few of them. There are a lot more that are available. We're going to be focusing primarily on Ambergris Caye, but do know that we have a couple there for Cayo and can certainly help you out though if you are looking at other parts of the country. Note that this photo is not a tiny home that is available right now. It is actually Cayo Espanto, which is a neighboring island to Ambergris Caye. It's where a lot of folks go if they want just some R&R, get away from everyone and everything. Only a handful of cabanas there, but it's a good example of what a tiny home could look like. All right, so we're going to jump into this. Please note for anybody listening after the session that it is November, end of November, as we are recording this 2022. And so if you are listening at a later date, do note that prices may not be the same, inventory may not be the same, but at least you get a good handle of what's out in the market at this point. My name is Rachel Jensen. I'm the owner of Luna Realty Belize here on Ambergris Caye. I do work countrywide though, but I am currently based on Ambergris Caye. I'm also a board member for the BNAR, which is the National Association of Real Estate here in Belize. I'm originally from New York, made my way to Ambergris Caye about 10 years ago in 2012, and just absolutely fell in love with the country, the people, the culture. And 10 years later, if you asked me 10 years ago if I thought I would still be here, I have no idea, honestly. But I have to say, it's been a very fun journey, met a lot of incredible people. And I think at the end of the day, it's really the people that keep other people here, right? You build those relationships, those friendships, and all of a sudden, you look at the clock and 10 years has passed. But it's a very, very beautiful place to be in the world. And especially now it's getting cooler in North America. It's neat to have the sunshine, tropical temperatures here pretty much year round. In December, we do drop a little bit temperature wise to sometimes we get about mid 60s during the evening, mid 70s during the day. And it's funny because you see all the people who've lived here for a while, or all the locals are in their parkas and getting warm and cozy, while the tourists are still showing up in their shorts and tank tops, since it's a heck of a lot warmer here than it is compared to where they came from. But we are in the middle of welcoming high season. So high season here in the country typically starts around Thanksgiving, US Thanksgiving time. So we've started to welcome a lot of people here to the country, which has been exciting to see. And this time of the year is really the kickoff to high season. So we will expect high season to continue through about May. And usually we have peak though, would be the US holidays would be Thanksgiving. Of course, there's Christmas, New Year's, and then spring break time. We get a lot of families coming down, a lot of people traveling at that point. Usually it's about middle of February through about middle of April. So that just gives you an idea if you're somebody who is looking to perhaps rent your home. You probably don't want to be here during peak season. I know some of you may want to, but if your primary goal is to earn cash flow, you probably want to skip being here in peak season. So to jump into it, we're going to cover just a couple of highlights about Belize and really tiny homes more specifically. We're going to go through a couple of the top tiny homes available right now, and then we'll have an open forum Q&A session at the end. I believe it'll be about a 30-minute session here. So if you do have to hop off before then, feel free to. If we have a lot of questions coming in, I'm certainly happy to stay on and we can answer those throughout the session. I do want to make a note on the bottom left-hand side, you'll see the email address info@lunarealtybelize.com, info@lunarealtybelize.com. Feel free to reach out to me via that email address if we don't get any of your questions answered, or perhaps you're listening to this afterwards and you're trying to reach out to me. That would be the best email address to do so. So info@lunarealtybelize. So today we're focusing on tiny homes, and I'm going to give you the 411 about tiny homes. And for some of you, you may be newer to this concept. I know when I first moved here and I bought a condo on the southern part of Ambergris Caye, the condo that I bought was about 500 square feet. Now, I never thought of it as a tiny condo per se, but it certainly is smaller than what some people were used to. But what I've learned with that design specifically is it really was best utilized to use every nook and cranny. Right now, there are some things I thought that could have been done a little bit better, but overall, it was a very efficient use of 500 square foot space. Now, tiny homes are a little bit smaller than that. On average, they range from about 100 to 400 square feet of interior space. That doesn't include loft. So if there may be a second floor, it does not include that. And it does not include the exterior square footage. Note, in Belize, we do tend to live outside. This is a very tropical climate here. And so a lot of the activities do tend to happen outside, whether it's on verandas or in the swimming pool or at the water. And so typically when we are living outside, we tend to have extra square footage on the exterior of our home. So it tends to be verandas, like I mentioned, maybe outdoor decks, screened in porches. Those sort of elements give the home a much bigger feel than just being that interior square foot usage of space. Now, I'm going to actually jump down there to the last bullet point where it says a tiny home is different than a home with small square footage. And I do want to highlight that because in Belize, I think like in North America and probably even the US specifically, like everything is supersized me, right? Everything is bigger than it needs to be. And so we get so used to living in the square footage, larger square footage that we don't really realize when you say, all right, we're going to downsize from 3,000 square feet to 500 square feet, like what that actually means. It's very hard for us to conceptualize that. In Belize, a lot of the homes are built smaller, to have a smaller footprint. It's not uncommon here to see locals living within a 1-2 bedroom home with their entire family. And so when you see property that's for sale, you may see that it's 600 square feet, for example, but it may not necessarily be a tiny home. Even though it'd be a little larger than the average tiny home, but it may not be considered a tiny home. What makes tiny homes unique is the fact that they are really laid out to have the best usage of space. I mentioned that before. Every nook and cranny is properly utilized. If you're buying a home with a loft and it's a tiny home, they tend to have storage space there in the stairs to best utilize that. There's just a lot of thought that's gone into it to make sure that even though you're reducing your square footage, your footprint, you're not necessarily reducing or cutting out anything that you've gotten used to. Now, with that being said, a lot of times I know when people are looking at real estate prices, they tend to look at price per square foot. I think if you're doing that and coming into Belize, you're going to be missing out on a lot of opportunities because here it's not really done that way. Yes, there's a price per square foot for just general construction and luxury construction and whatnot. But when you're building a tiny home, you're building all of the expensive parts in just a more compact area. So you still need the full kitchen. You still need the bathroom, which is going to have that shower and the bathtub, or maybe a bathtub, but shower for sure, and toilet and sink. And so you're building the expensive parts. In addition to that, a lot of times tiny homes tend to be eco-friendly homes. So people are bringing in water cisterns or water catchment systems, or they're putting their own septic, or perhaps they're using solar panels. These things are not cheap additions. And so when you're putting all the numbers together, maybe you got your land for a really great deal. Maybe your construction labor is lower than it would be in North America. But overall, you're looking at about $400 or $500, even $600 a square foot in some cases, if it's unique. I know for some people that are on the line, they've looked at the over the water tiny homes. They were first phase were able to get in at a great price because it was in pre-COVID prices. Since then, though, prices have skyrocketed. And what they've seen is that it's just more expensive to build over the water homes than it would be if you're building on land. So now you have to start factoring in those costs of what are the additional fees of where I'm building. Is it easy to build there? Do they need access? So all of these little things really do make a big difference when you're looking at price per square foot. And then I mentioned that there before, that the third bullet point there is that many homes have off-grid features. Now, not all of them do. They may just be a tinier footprint than a regular square footage home, but they may not necessarily have those off-grid features. So I know a lot of times those are coupled together. The tiny homes include the off-grid features, but here in Belize, we've done a couple of webinars over this past month of November talking about eco-friendly homes. You do tend to find eco-friendly homes here have some off-grid features, but there are also a lot of home sites that are being sold that don't have public utilities hooked up to them. So they don't have public water, they don't have public electricity. So they are incorporating those off-grid features. So just something to think about too, as you are pricing out whether you want to build or you are looking at something that's already existing. If you're somebody like a tiny home fanatic, will say, I really started getting into the tiny home movement about 4 or 5 years ago. And there are a couple of folks that I follow on YouTube, and I was watching some lady who lives in Canada, and she explores the tiny homes there. And there she was talking about these tiny homes that she was finding for like $30,000, $40,000 US, I guess Canadian, because it was in Canada. But we just don't tend to find that as much here because it's a little bit harder to get all of the materials needed to get to that price point. But there are certainly opportunities for you to look into. So I do want to make the disclaimer that all of the prices that you see in the presentation are in US dollars. Typically, when you are doing a real estate transaction in the country, between foreigner is done in US dollars. Please don't be surprised if when you're going through the closing process, the escrow account is in the United States. That happens, 99% of the time when the two buyer and seller, they're both from outside of Belize. So I am going to note that all the prices are in Belize dollars unless otherwise noted. And again, use that email address, info@lunarealtybelize.com, if you see anything that you're interested in. All right, a quick look inward for you. I'm going to pull up the poll here. And all right, what is drawing you to owning a tiny home? And so this is just something I'm curious about. I don't know. I don't remember here if you have the choice of just choosing one or multiple. Give that a shot and let me know. But are you interested in decluttering and living a smaller and a more simple life? Are you looking at a unique rental property? And if it's other, just let us know what that is in the Q&A section. And, tiny homes are certainly something that is drawing a lot of renters, especially with the usage of Airbnb, right? You go to Airbnb and it says, these featured homes or these featured rentals. And when you look at them, they're really unique, like the tree houses, for example, or these cute little tiny homes on a ranch or a farm somewhere, right? And so I know that tiny homes do tend to be a big draw for renters. All right, so it does look like a majority are actually looking at, 60% are looking at having a unique rental property. Awesome. 20% of people are looking at decluttering. And then someone else says other. Feel free to let us know what that other is in that Q&A section. I'm just curious as to what that is for you. All right, so just a couple of considerations for you to bear in mind. And, I would even turn this into a checklist format, because when you're coming into Belize, it is a different buying process, which I have a whole document for you to learn about if you want to learn about that. But there are also just considerations if you've never owned a tiny home. I know that a majority of the clients that I've worked with previously who did decide to buy a tiny home have actually never owned a tiny home previously and never owned anything off grid before. So there's kind of that crash course to making sure that you're understanding what it is that you're getting into. If you're someone who wants to live in your tiny home, it's good for you to ask these realistic questions. Have you lived in a tiny home before? What is the amount of square footage that you're living in now? And do you think you're going to be able to live more compact and live in a more smaller square footage? And then at the end of the day, how much space do you really live in your home? How much square footage do you think that you need? And then the third one here is how many people are going to be living in the home, and is that feasible? And the reason that I bring that up is sometimes I think people equate tiny homes to cheaper, right? And so let's say I have this family of 5, I'm dreaming of living overseas, but I can't necessarily afford a $300,000 cash purchase. But I think tiny homes, smaller square footage, I'm going to bring my family of 5 and we're going to find a really cool tiny home to live in. Well, that's 5 people living in, let's say, on the average of 400 square foot home. Is that possible? Do you all love each other enough that you're not going to go crazy being on top of each other? And so just because it is a tiny home doesn't always mean it's cheaper, for example, or doesn't always mean it's cheap. Maybe less expensive, but it also may not be feasible to have that many people living in that close of quarters. So you have to be realistic with yourself, with the people that you're moving with, and understand if that's something that that would work out for you. And then just thinking about the construction questions. I know that we talked about a lot of this in our previous sessions. If you're new to our webinar series, just feel free to go to my YouTube, Luna Realty Belize, I guess not .com, but Luna Realty Belize, and you'll be able to see some of our sessions there. But when it comes to constructing a tiny home, whether you're building or you're buying, there are certain considerations that you want to bear in mind. And this is true not just for tiny home, the first couple, but for any homes generally, is do the pilings go down to the bedrock, and is the foundation and are the pilings solid? A lot of the construction that is done here is wood. And especially if you're living on the coast or you're living in an area that can flood, we do tend to build elevated. And so I'm building a home now in Cayo. We're on a river. We know that the river floods. And so we're building 10 feet elevated. Now it is possible to get wooden pilings, except we didn't necessarily want that. We wanted it to be more sturdy. Wood here is great, and it's just something that needs to be treated, every 6 to 12 months, there needs to be stain on the wood, and we didn't want that. We wanted something solid. And so what I would always recommend is, if you are building a wooden structure or you're building any structure elevated, make sure those pilings are concrete. And then, of course, making sure that they're going down to the bedrock. That's very important. You want them to tie them into the bedrock to make sure that home isn't going anywhere. And then also 3 is, are there off-grid features? And so we talked about that before. Sometimes these tiny homes have off-grid features. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're just tiny, but good for you to know that when you're going into it. And then number 4 here is, will I receive title? And so typically tiny homes are structured in a strata title unless they're on large plots of land. And the reason for that, in Belize, we have two types of title: strata title and freehold title. Strata is typically when it's, one piece of land, one titled piece of land, and there are multiple structures on it. And so think condos, for example, tiny homes also, because typically people have one or two, three, maybe four plots of land that they're doing these communities in. And the homes are a little bit closer, so they're not sitting on their own parcel. That's what we call a strata title. Now, most tiny homes will be strata, not all, but most will be strata. And so it's good for you to know that. And, will I receive title is a good question anyway, but also knowing what kind of title you have is going to be just good for you to have in your back pocket. All right, so we're going to be focusing on ambergris for these first few here. And that is where you see this gold yellowish pin over here. Ambergris Caye, we are located about 40 miles northeast of Belize City. If you're just starting to learn about the districts, we do have another session that we did previously where we talked about the 6 districts. Highly recommend you watch that video. You can always reach out to me for the link or find it there on YouTube. So the first one I'm going to mention to you is a canal front tiny home. These right now are pre-construction. They're starting construction in January. Will take about 8 to 10 months to construct. And what's really neat about these homes is they are located on the canal. We do have some folks who are looking to put in their own little plunge pool or dipping pool, so it'll add that unique feature to it. But they're going for about 240,000 US, but there is 50% financing available. You don't always find financing in Belize, and especially as a foreigner, so that's good for you to keep in the back of your mind. These are larger square footage than a typical tiny home. They're about 670 square feet plus outdoor space. And these are loft style, and you can't really see it too well because I apologize, they're a little bit smaller. If you want to get more info, I can certainly send it to you. But it is a loft style here. There is a full kitchen. There's an owner lockout closet. There's the washer dryer space there too, so you can have all of that within your home. And then the outdoor space, there's the front deck, and then there's also the back deck. So you have what we were mentioning before is that outdoor tropical living. And then I mentioned to you that these can be added to the dipping pool. This property is located just west of San Pedro town. So I apologize, I don't have a map in here, but it's located just west of San Pedro town across the bay in an area called Costa del Sol. It's about a 3-5 minute boat ride, or you can actually drive from the popular Secret Beach to this property and be there in about 12-15 minutes, depending on who's driving. So it's a really neat floor plan. It was very well laid out, and the folks who designed this home have been in the tiny home space for a while. So as they've designed it, they made sure that every little area was properly utilized to making sure that they are getting the best use of space. And so if you've been on the sessions with us before, you may remember that you want to just remember this number in the front, or just email me as you see it. If you're interested in this specific property, just email me info@lunarealtybelize.com, and you can just put the number in the subject line and I'll know what one that corresponds to, and I can send you more information if you are interested. Again, 50% financing available. I'd say these will be ready for use end of next year. So it's nice. You have that brand new home that you're able to use, or you can put it in the rental program should you choose. Another tiny home in that area, the Costa del Sol area. This is located about half a mile south of this community here. This one's located about half a mile south of that. The road does not continue to this property. So the road that I mentioned before to Secret Beach with the other property, so the road does not continue down here. So this one is only accessible by boat at this point, but both of the properties do have a boat there specifically for the development for guests and owners to be using. This one, I was mentioning it before, it's over the water. It's a little bit higher than you see here in the renderings, but this is a tiny home that's currently under construction. The owners could not move forward with their home. It's home number 18. And I can send you the map and all the interior renderings and whatnot, where they're at with the construction progress. They are anticipating about another 10 to 12 months until it is ready to open. So I'd say, again, end of next year as well would be a likely time for this to be available. In this community, there are 20 tiny homes in total, all of them under construction. They are all sold at this point. So this is the only one that's become available as a resale under construction at this point. And it is a studio model. This has that full kitchenette. And something unique about these homes, it has a glass floor. So for a portion of the floor, not the entire floor. So you're able to look down and see the marine life there. The one thing I do want to mention is these homes are not over the Caribbean. You don't have that crystal clear blue water. It is considered a tidal lake, so it's not stagnant water, but it's not necessarily that crystal clear. It's more designed from the eco perspective. These will have solar panels and then also has a reverse osmosis water system there. So it's actually a hybrid when it comes to electric. So we'll have solar, but it's also connected up to the grid. So unique features here. Again, you can see they're very, very different, but these do have a ton of outdoor space, including the rooftop area, which you can see over here. We'll have the palapa, and then there's the large decks in the back as well. This one's going for $215. There can be financing on it up to 50% with a bank. With the first opportunity, that 50% is with the developer. This one, you would be working with a bank. So do bear in mind, there may be additional costs to get that loan set up. And that's number 2, over the water tiny homes. Again, just jot these down on your pen and paper or email me as you're seeing them if this is something you would like more information on. All right, number 3, these are 2 tiny homes and then also a 2-bed, 2-bath. This is going for $379,000. This is in the Secret Beach area. It's about a mile from the beach. So you're about 5 to 7 minute golf cart ride from this property to the water. There are no water views here, but this is a great option for somebody who's thinking about, the duplex or triplex concept where you're living in the home. You can see the home over here, the green one, and then there are 2 rental cabanas over there, the yellow and the red. So the bigger one, the green home, or seafoam green, if you want to get a little more specific, is a 2-bed, 2-bath. And then these individual cottages over here are 1-bed, 1-bath, more of a studio model, really. So, and these have kitchenettes in them too. So it's not full kitchen. Whereas the larger home, which would be more the home that you're living in, does have that. So these I think are quite affordable, going for $379, and that is in the Secret Beach area. And so I think with this one too, because it is a fairly new build, what you'd be able to do is just put a ton of landscaping in. It does look a little barren now, but if you just put landscaping in, I think it'll really create this tropical element that we do tend to find here in Belize. And then the other point that I did want to mention is the screened in porches. You don't always find screened in porches, but it is a really nice advantage to have, especially if it gets a little rainy sometimes and those bugs come out, to be able to still enjoy the outdoor space there. If you're on one of my past webinars, you may recognize this one. This one is also in the Secret Beach area. This is located on the water though, so you do have those water views. And Secret Beach, for those of you who haven't been down here before, is on the west side of the island. And it's a beautiful part where people are going to enjoy the beaches. A lot of times when people hear Belize, they, for some reason, just think beaches, but that's not necessarily the case, especially Ambergris Caye. Ambergris Caye is known for its diving and snorkeling, and we do run parallel to the reef. So there's a lot of preservation that's put on the reef. We don't want to destroy it. So yes, there's seagrass that comes to shore, and you can remove the seagrass when it's dead, but any living seagrass, you cannot remove that. You can't take it out if it's living. And so it's not always the most swimmable beaches on the east side or the east coast of the island. So a lot of people come to Secret Beach. Secret Beach is on the west side. It's a fun day trip. You can go out there, go for a full day, go for a few hours, but it has this crystal clear blue water. You go up there, it goes up to about your hips. You can walk out for miles, and you don't get that seagrass on this side. So a lot of folks are drawn to this area because of that specifically, but it is a little bit more remote. And in this part, Secret Beach homes and lots, there are no utilities. So there's no water hookup and there's no electric hookup. So all of these homes do tend to be off grid, so because they don't have those public utilities. But this is a unique business opportunity, commercial, or perhaps you don't want to rent it out necessarily if you're thinking about maybe having a family estate or something along those lines. Here, there are 4 guest cottages. Then there's a large floor where you would live, or that would be your personal space. And then there's also a caretaker's apartment. So this one is going for $850. If you are interested in it, again, you don't have to operate it as a business. It could be that estate for the family, but it is already there and operating as a B&B if you're looking to get into that industry. And that was number 4. Those were the Secret Beach cottages. All right, we're going to jump over to Cayo now. Cayo is where you see this forest green pin heading over to Cayo. If you're coming from Belize City, where the star is about an hour and a half to go from the star over here, Belize City, to Cayo. If you're coming from Ambergris Caye, the gold one over here, takes about 15 minutes by puddle jumper, or an hour and a half by boat to get to Belize City, and then you'll take that hour and a half journey to Cayo. So in Cayo, we have the cute tiny homes here. These are little cottages, about 612 square feet. This actually does include the loft square footage, but what's cute about these homes is it has the front porch and it also has the back porch. And what's really awesome about how these homes are built is they have a row, we call it cottage row. And there are a handful of cottages that look similar to this in a row. And it's just so incredibly picturesque. I highly recommend, I think I have another picture I do have a picture of it. Oh, I might have taken it out. I might have taken it. I thought I had it in here. Sorry, guys, I might have taken it out. But it's a really neat property. And I think when I'm thinking rentals, I think this is one that's going to rent very well. It's in a community there. It's on the river. Well, this one's not on the river, but it's in the river community. So you have access to the river. There is short-term financing considered no longer than the year, and 50% down would be required. But you do have that beautiful indoor and outdoor space. And this is located in Santa Familia, which is about 15 minutes to San Ignacio and then 20 minutes to Spanish Lookout. So right there in the sweet spot of those two towns. And that's number 5, the cozy Cayo cottage. And just again, remember those numbers and email me if you're interested. And then the 6th and final one that we're going to recap today is this Eco Jungle home. So this community is located about 45 minutes from Benque Viejo. The developer there is a great guy. He stayed involved in making sure that the homes are getting constructed properly. He has a contracting business as well. And so his goal is to really make sure these homes are as properly built as possible and well utilized as possible. So this one is one of the bargain homes. This one is going for $69,000. It's 360 square feet, so really fits within that parameter of tiny home. It has some nice outdoor space. What I would even recommend is if this is something that's of interest to you, pulling the deck out a little bit more, and then you could have additional outdoor space there. This one is a 1-bed, 1-bath, more of that studio model, and it does have the solar and the batteries and cisterns and everything because this community is totally off grid. There is some landscaping there already. You can obviously do more, but it's in a jungle setting. So whereas this community is more of an open field and you have a lot of farming there, this is truly within the jungle. So you see that backdrop, that is what it is like all around. It's a stunning property. This one, I've been to this community quite a few times, and it is a little bit further from town, about 45 minutes, but there's a great expat community there. I actually had a birthday party that I went to for one of the folks in September, met a lot of the other community members who are living there full time. So neat to see that the community really get built. And that's primarily a lot of expats from North America who are living within this community. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit larger, this development does have larger homes as well, 100% off grid. But because we're on the theme of tiny homes today, I'm featuring a tiny home. And again, I just think it's a really great price. We don't typically find tiny homes priced like this. Especially the newer ones because construction costs have gone up so much, but it's a great option for you. Again, for about 45 minutes from Benque, there's a road. It's about a 7-mile road that goes from Benque to this property. It's been so much smoother than it has been, but it's not yet fully paved, although they are talking about fully paving it. And once they do, I assume that these prices would go up. So again, that's number 6, and that's the Eco Jungle home. And then that's where we're going to finish off our recap of the 6 opportunities. This was really just geared towards you learning what's out there and then feel free to reach out to get the specifics. And I do invite you to join our upcoming Belize briefs. We have a 2-bedroom condos available on Ambergris Caye. We're going to do that one on Thursday, December 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern from our educational series. This is for our Americans on the line. If you have an IRA, yes, you can use it to own property in Belize. And we're going to have that webinar on December 13th. And then we have a property update. I know a handful of you have looked at Aruna previously, and we do have our monthly construction update coming up December 16th. Now, I do add webinars regularly, and you can find a whole schedule on lunarealtybelize.com/webinars. Feel free to go to that website. That's where you get the registration link to register for it. And then you, of course, can join us. And as you see more webinars pop up, feel free to register. I am recording all of these. You'll be able to find them up on YouTube if you do want to reflect back on anything that perhaps you're listening to this a little bit later and these sessions happened already. Now, with that being said, what I'm going to do is open up the floor to any questions or thoughts. And I see some folks have reached out about specific properties they want more information on. Not a problem at all. I see Craig here mentioning that he prefers a smaller footprint. Some other folks here mentioning that they just have never lived in a tiny home before, but it piqued their interest. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And again, if you're thinking from the rental perspective, I think that there's a ton of unique opportunities out there that will set your home apart from being just that traditional rental that somebody is having when they come into the country. So I do recommend reaching out, getting those specific details, and feel free to reach out regularly too, because a lot of times there are new properties coming on the market. And we encourage you to reach out and see what that looks like. Alrighty, folks. I look forward to having you reach out. Info at Luna Realty Belize, info at Luna Realty Belize. Looking forward to hearing from you and seeing you here in Belize soon. Bye, everyone.